want to thank everyone on the panel for taking time to come here and be part of this conversation. Each of you is intimately involved in college athletics, and Senator Campbell will be joining us shortly. She is delayed at another markup, but she will be here soon. But the conversation about college sports needs to be driven not just by commissioners and lawyers and media companies and the wealthiest athletic programs, but we also need to hear directly from coaches and athletic leaders and university presidents and athletes who are responsible for the programs that this bill is designed to protect. The Protect College Sports Act is about restoring order to a system that is collapsing due to too few rules and too much litigation. It preserves real NIL opportunities for student athletes. It protects student athletes. It creates national standards on transfers, eligibility, tampering, inducements, and revenue sharing. And it gives schools the ability to enforce rules without being sued every time they try to keep the system from collapsing. But this conversation is also about opportunity. For a lot of student athletes, including many first-generation college students, college sports are a pathway to a degree, to a career, to financial literacy, to leadership, and to a better life. If the system becomes nothing more than an unregulated bidding war, the student athletes in the schools with the least leverage are the ones most likely to get hurt. This bill is designed to protect the entire college sports ecosystem, not just the schools at the top of the revenue ladder. That means women's sports, means Olympic sports, means HBCUs, regional public universities, and athletes who need medical protection, scholarship protection, academic support, honest NIL rules, and a real path to graduation. We are grateful that each of you is here because you bring different perspectives. Women's basketball, football, HBCUs, Group of Five programs, ACC athletics, and institutional leadership. I want to briefly introduce our participants today. We have Coach Felisa Leggett-Jack. Coach Jack is the head women's basketball coach at Syracuse University. A former All-American player, Coach Jack has led multiple NCAA tournament teams and was named ACC Coach of the Year in 2024. Congratulations on that. Charles Huff. Coach Huff is the head football coach at the University of Memphis and brings experience from Marshall, Southern Mississippi, Alabama, and Penn State. He is widely recognized for his player development expertise. Derek Mason. Coach Mason is the head football coach at Middle Tennessee State University. Previously head coach at Vanderbilt, Coach Mason is regarded as one of the best defensive coaches in college football. Vice Admiral J.W. Crawford III. Vice Admiral Crawford is president of Texas Southern University since 2024. Prior to his time as president, he had a career in military leadership, law, and education. Sharika Montgomery. Ms. Montgomery is Commissioner of the Big South Conference. Appointed in 2023, Commissioner Montgomery brings extensive experience in NCAA administration and was previously Deputy Commissioner of the Missouri Valley Conference. Sarah Bauer. Ms. Bauer is a student athlete at the University of Akron, where she plays soccer. In addition to her role on the field, Ms. Bauer represents student athletes in leadership activities and brings a current athlete's perspective to the discussion today. And Gannon Flynn. Mr. Flynn is a student athlete at Boston University, competing for BU's Division I swimming and diving team. He has participated in student athlete advocacy efforts, all while balancing academic and athletic responsibilities. And let me start, let's start, President Crawford, with a question for you, which is, TSU is an HBCU in a major media market, my hometown of Houston, with a deep mission of serving students and preparing them for a life beyond college. Your university has also been active in NIL education and athlete empowerment. The goal of the Protect College Sports Act is to stabilize our collegiate athletic system with enforceable rules for all. From the perspective of an HBCU president, what does a stable national collegiate athletic framework mean for putting the student in student athlete, particularly for student athletes who may be first-generation college students, come from families without lawyers or agents, and need help navigating NIL contracts, taxes, financial literacy, and long-term career planning?
Thank you for that question, Senator Cruz. First of all, it's a pleasure to be here, and thank you for the invitation, and thank you for the great efforts that you and your colleagues are engaged in. I come at this issue from the standpoint of balance. House was an attempt to address the imbalance, if you will, relative to the athlete. But since that time, that imbalance has become uncertainty. And that uncertainty is making it more difficult for institutions to plan, how to have long-term success in programs, how to develop young women and men as athletes. I think it's important that we recognize that, first and foremost, institutions of higher education are there to educate, and they're there to educate all of our students. And you made a point earlier that there are many that have achieved their advanced education degree because they were able to participate in athletics. So what this bill does is enable schools like Texas Southern University to plan, to project, to support the athlete. One of my concerns about the current transfer mobility is that it presents an academic discontinuity for the athlete. And it's important, we've seen that it's equally important to that $1 million professional athlete that we've seen that history has shown us that having a degree does matter.
Yeah.
Having options does matter. And we're here to not only, we're here to allow students to advance their talents both in the classroom and academically, athletically, to develop in contributing citizens to our communities and leaders. So what this bill does is offer the ability for institutions to look at a stable, solidified, and sustainable model for college athletics that spans the depth and breadth of the diversity of schools that compete.
Well, thank you. I agree, and I will say, for a student that transfers 3-4 times in 4, 5, 6 years, that kid is extremely unlikely to get a real education. If you're just at a school for a year and a half, you're not building relationships with professors, you're not having any continuity to your academic studies. And we all know, but it's worth remembering, 99% of the students competing in college athletics, they're not going to go to the NBA, they're not going to go to the NFL. If you're a superstar, if you're Michael Jordan, you'll be fine. But most of these kids are not going to be on the cover of Wheaties. But college sports is giving them a ticket to go get an education and get the skills that help them. Senator Coons from Delaware has joined us. He has been a partner in this for a long time. Senator Coons, do you have any opening comments or questions? This is designed just to be a conversation.
Well, thank you, Chairman. Great to be with you, Senator Cruz. I know Senator Kent will be joining momentarily. Good morning, everybody. It's great to be with you. And great to be here. I'm just briefly going to voice support for what Chairman Cruz and Ranking Member Cantwell have assembled, a bill that really does protect the rights and interests and concerns of college athletes in terms of scholarships and health care and transparency around agents and NIL rights, but balances it with some of the chaos-constraining measures that are critical. So when I've talked to coaches, when I've talked to players, transferring every single year and playing 5, 6, 7 years, going in and out of the pros, going in and out of other parts of the world to play, creates a chaotic environment, makes it difficult to coach, makes it difficult to have a cohesive college experience. Figuring out a way that we can sustainably fund, preserve, and protect the 90% of college sports that isn't what occupies eyeballs on every weekend. 550,000 college athletes, to the point you were just making, 95% of them will not end up being professional athletes, but can and should have a great experience in college sports, contribute to campus, contribute to the community, get a great education. But this current system, which focuses on the iceberg, the very top of the iceberg, the handful of athletes everybody knows that are on a Wheaties box or make millions, misses the majority of the ecosystem of college sports. My state, University of Delaware, Del State, have had some truly outstanding athletes. You might have heard of Joe Flacco. You might have heard of Elena Deladon, for example. With the current transfer portal, they would have played one season and left. They won, in Elena's case, gold medals in the Olympics, WNBA Player of the Year, Joe Flacco, MVP in the Super Bowl. But in the current system, he would have been gone. Yep. And an agent would have been talking in his ear every single minute, would have gotten him in the transfer portal, and the community that nurtured him and cheered for him wouldn't have known him. So I just, on behalf of the thousands of non-Texas universities and colleges that are not ever going to be national champions.
I don't understand the non-Texas point.
I'm just grateful for your hard work and leadership on this, and appreciate everyone being here to speak this morning. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Coons. All right, Commissioner Montgomery, do your schools feel that they're competing under the same set of rules as the biggest programs? Or has the current NIL and transfer environment widened the gap? And how would a national framework address these issues? And do you believe the Protect College Sports Act would help close that gap?
Absolutely. First and foremost, thank you so much, Senator Cruz, as well as Senator Coons, and for all of your colleagues and the work that you've done. The Big South Conference is comprised of 9 member institutions in 3 contiguous states, North Carolina, South Carolina, and Virginia. The patchwork of state laws just in those 3 states, there has been a level of instability from that perspective. As our coaches recruit not only against themselves in our conference, but across other coaches in those respective states, there has been a widening of the gap with the current rules that we have. As we've had an opportunity to review the Protecting College Sport Acts, the things that are enclosed here will provide a level of stability as well as sustainability, while also providing an opportunity and a pathway for success that I know our current 4,300 student athletes really value as being Big South Conference student athletes. And so the information that's included is definitely a step in the right direction to bring that much-needed stability in college athletics.
Well, thank you, Commissioner. All right, let's turn. We have 3 coaches here, and so let's hear from the coaches. Coach Huff, Coach Mason, Coach Jack, each of you are leading programs in the middle of a massive structural change. Coaches now have to recruit high school players, recruit the transfer portal, retain your own locker room, manage NIL expectations, and deal with tampering, often all at the same time. The Protect College Sports Act is designed to create national standards on transfers, eligibility, and tampering. From a coach's perspective, how is the current system impacting your coaching, and what rules do you need in order to build a program instead of re-recruiting your roster every few months? And Coach Jack, why don't we start with you?
Again, thank you so much, Senators, for this opportunity to share and to grow and to become. We are now in the process of being able to leave our legacy. What does that look like? Right now, it looks like universities without borders. You know, as a basketball coach, you step out of line, that's a turnover. You have the other team's ball. But there's no boundaries right now because it's growing and growing and growing. And this Protect College Sports Act is going to allow us to have those boundaries again. Here at Syracuse, we have been in a blessed situation because I was able to coach a young lady for 5 years, 5'2", came from Rochester. She didn't know Division I, Division II. She just knew that I was giving her a scholarship. And by me giving her a scholarship, she became a great student and also ended up being the 3rd leading scorer in the history of women's basketball with an opportunity of sustainability. And now with the change that's occurring, you're not getting anyone to stay and become, and the culture that she takes with her when she goes to Mexico, she goes to Saudi Arabia, she goes to Rwanda, she wears that block as loud and proud because it's something she believes in, and the culture she represents is something of bigger than herself, if you will. Right now, we're going to a place where you're coaching young ladies who's been to their fourth school, and they're not going to have any kind of control of how do I say I went to University X, Y, Z, and L.
Yeah.
and because we're playing right now with a game with no borders, and you're allowing this to happen by fighting for this the rule change where we can get those borders back, and we know what a turnover looks like.
Yeah. Thank you, Coach. Coach Huff?
Yes, first of all, thanks again for having me, Senators Cruz, Senator Coons. Appreciate the work you guys are doing. It is needed. It is appreciated on the ground level, and I appreciate being here to help. I would echo what Coach said. The stability is what we need. The issues that we've been in coaching for so long, and we've had boundaries, and we've had things that have been governed. And now those things are no longer governed. So we're spending less time coaching, developing, engaging our guys in our communities, engaging our guys in our universities, and governing, should you not be gambling on the game you're going to play in tonight.
Right.
The other side of that is having the conversations with these agents who are preying on the naiveness of the student athletes, right? They're encouraging them to make decisions without all the information. We've had multiple cases. I've had agents that are charging 35%.
Yep.
You know, those numbers you're preying on the naiveness of the young men and their family. And I'm all for them having representation and protecting themselves, but we got to have some governance on the agents, some registration to minimize some of the multiple transferring. Some of the transferring is occurring because of lack of education. Agents who are not registered, who are not certified, who are not governed, are encouraging kids to make decisions, and they don't even know if they're eligible. We've had agents call, and they're promoting a young man, and we get his transcript. He's not even eligible to play anywhere. So I think those two things, the ability to have some stability, so we know what's governed, so we can focus on the development, what we all went to college for: accountability, discipline, learning how to become an adult, learning how to work through adversity. And then this bill is going to help kind of put some control over the agents. Yep. Nothing wrong with having them, but they've got to be governed, they've got to be registered, so that, again, these young men and women aren't getting preyed upon by people who are taking advantage of things that they don't have to necessarily go through a registry or a process. So I think, again, there is hope. There always is change is inevitable. I don't think anybody on these panels or that you're going to talk to is going to be against the change that is going to occur. We have to adapt. But right now, our rules are under attack from the legal perspective, and it doesn't allow us to protect the young men and women in our programs as change occurs.
Well, and Coach, I'm glad you focused on the agents. That was something we spent a lot of time in this bill trying to put real protections, especially from coaches. I've heard a lot about the challenge of agents. I've heard a lot from high school coaches about agents that are preying on teenage kids who may not be terribly sophisticated, charging enormous amounts, giving these kids really bad advice. And so this bill caps agent compensation at 5%, which is much more in line with what agents earn in the pros, and it also sets up a registry and puts protections in place. Coach Mason.
I want to say thank you to Senator Coons, Senator Cruz. Right now, the state of college athletics is truly under attack. I mean, when we talk about agents, right, we're talking about people who have no credentialed sort of certifications. I mean, we're coaches, we're credentialed. And we spend time with our student athletes and their parents educating on the value of an education, the value of the experience. But what we've been seeing is this erosion of conversation between coaches and the student athlete, right? I do think the protections in this bill are warranted and needed. It feels like the Hunger Games in college athletics. It does. And, right now, as we talk about, what we're doing to help sustain growth and development, we're seeing less and less of it, right? I think, like for us, man, we spend a lot of time recruiting and turning over schedules since 2020. As we look at, COVID, the rules have been different every year. Every year, we've had to sustain change. And at some point in time, change has got to stop so we can actually grow, like the opportunity for our student athletes and our universities. If we want to keep, college athletics sustainable for everybody, not just the higher part of the ecosystem, then we have to dig deep and understand that rules, regulations, and order have to be restored in college athletics.
Fully agree. All right, let's turn to two of the participants in the Hunger Games. And I don't know if anyone's going to give you a crossbow or anything, but Sarah Gannon, from your perspective, what's working well in college sports and what's not? And what is your view on whether the Protect College Sports Act would help address the chaos in the system? And Sarah, why don't we start with you?
Yeah, thank you very much for the ability to be here and represent student athletes and have a voice. So we really appreciate that. It's a really good question. So what, from the Mid-American Conference, the biggest thing we've been talking about is the protection of academics. We really emphasize that we're students first before athletes. That's extremely important to us to have the process of going through the degree, have that progress, as well as protection of scholarships within academics and athletics in that aspect. So that is honestly a really big point for us is we want that protection because at the end of the day, we want to play the sport we love while gaining a degree. Being the student first is very important to us, and we believe through this bill, that is what it will help us do, is play the sport we love, keeping an equal, fair playing field while pursuing our degree for outside of college athletics and preparing us while we're doing that. It's just an opportunity to ensure regulations and be able to put our best foot forward.
What position you play?
I'm a goalkeeper.
So my best friend and college roommate's son is a goalkeeper at Rutgers right now. He just finished his freshman year, and he's loving it. When he was like 14, I whipped his tail one-on-one hoops, and I don't intend to play him again because he's gotten to be a big, striking young man, and I'm 1-0, and I'm not going to change that record. Gannon?
Thank you for inviting me, Chairman Cruz, Senator Coons. As a student athlete who has transferred, I did my freshman year at the University of Utah, and then in the wake of the House settlement, I transferred to Boston University. So I think the transfer portal in and of itself is an amazing thing, but it is the Wild West. Transferring, not all of my credits transferred, and I have to have 2 full years of credits to get my degree from BU. So as you see more and more athletes do 1 year, 2 years, transfer 4, 5, 6 times, it's impossible to get those degrees. And I think it's very important that, all of our coaches, especially in swimming, you're not making money even if you are good enough to go pro in swimming, is you're a student first.
Right.
So getting those good degrees and the scholarships that go to Olympic and women's sports do wonders to allow students who may not have gone to such prestigious universities to go on, become doctors, lawyers, teachers, and help the next generation grow up. And so I think that this bill, it does a good job of regulating the transfer industry. And then I think it's great to put those student athletes on those voting boards within the NCAA rulemaking committees. Right now, the courts are kind of the athlete voices, and one athlete can completely change everything with every injunction, every lawsuit that's filed. at this point, at every week, changes the rules that many of us are trying to follow. So this bill, it puts in good guide rails to make sure that our sports can continue on and have a fair competitions.
Fully agree. Senator Coons, do you have any questions?
I'd just be interested in what are the parts of this bill that are the most important for the coaches and the athletes? What can we absolutely not do without? It's a broad, balanced, bipartisan compromise. It's got a lot to it, but what's the thing that stood out to you where you thought, boy, if that doesn't get done, they're not actually making progress? Anybody? Jump ball.
I'll start with governance. You know, like for us, consistency and governance. We've all seen the Sorensby case and, you know, what's transpired, you know, with that pre and post. And what we know and understand is we've always had rules around what we do. It's grown our sports. It's allowed us to have, you know, wonderful memories about, you know, what teams, when, where, how, why. But we are worried, you know, with the state of college athletics and gambling and what's happening in and around it. Will it become an epidemic? And with that being the case, not having, you know, true opportunity to govern the sports with rules and regulations becomes really hard because everything gets tied up. And so now, and we saw it with the eligibility issues over the last 2 or 3 years, we need strong governance to give ourselves a chance. It may not be perfect, but we need strong governance.
Yeah.
I would say, sir, that you know, all the attention is on the NIL piece and on bringing some standardization to that, and that's really critical. But from my perspective, stepping back and looking at it from a programmatic, the eligibility and the transfer piece and the fact that you have put academics first, because there's protections in there for our athletes, academic, not only their protection from being predatory agents, but protection so they can continue their academic career if something were to happen with them relative to their sports. So if you think about the beauty of athletics, it's not just the winning, but when young women and men participate in athletics, the lessons they learn translate into life. The lessons about collaboration, teamwork, resilience, sacrificing self in order for a unit to win. All those sorts of things are in jeopardy if we become sort of a template or a platform just to the next level. And as it's been pointed out, most of our athletes will not be in that next level. So to have this experience, college sports is a critical component of the overall student experience. And nothing energizes a campus like a vibrant athletic program that is a shared experience as opposed to something just focused on a few. And so what this bill is doing is creating the predictability, removing the uncertainty, and enabling athletes like the two that we have here before us and the coaches that we have here with us to be able to actually coach, learn, play, compete, and enjoy that experience. So those pieces, I would just offer it in final comments. We have 5 of our 16 athletic programs have a perfect score in the NCAA academic progress rate. Our basketball team has perennially been at the top and at the very top in 2024. So those athletes are going to take that experience on the court, on the links, on the field. They're going to take those lessons, these achievements, and then go forward into life and be contributing citizens to the country. So enabling that stability, that certainty, that lack of, that increase of predictability is what I would say is critically important.
Thank you, and thank you for all your comments. It's why it's called the Protect College Sports Act, is that the chairman and ranking member worked so successfully together to come up with a balanced bill that will protect college sports. Thank you. I have another hearing to go to, but thank you for that.
Thank you, Senator Coons. And I will say, President Crawford, on that point, the skills that young men and women get from college sports are enormously important. I suspect this is true for Senator Coons, but I hire a lot of former college athletes because you know that they know how to work hard, they have discipline, they understand teamwork. You can't be a hot dog going out and just going on your own. You got to be able to work together and Coach, you mentioned also gambling, and I will say one of the real challenges to all of sports, college sports, pro sports, is the threat to integrity, and the threat coming from gambling. If we get to the point that we wonder, is every wide receiver who drops a catch making some money on that? Is every pitcher who puts the ball in the dirt betting on the side? That is a messed up system, and it goes right to the heart of what we're doing. And so one of the really important parts of this bill is trying to put in place protections to be able to protect the integrity and to be able to enforce prohibitions on gambling that really do, I think, threaten the entire system. Ranking Member Cantwell has joined us. Do you have an opening comment you care to make or questions?
I don't have an opening statement. I'm sorry I'm late. It turns out the debate about public lands is the only thing more controversial than the sports debate, but we had a markup in energy, and so I had to weigh in on important. I represent a beautiful state, and so those issues are very important issues to our state. So sorry to be delayed, and thank you so much for, thank you, for the input this morning, and I'm not sure I've caught up on everything that everybody has said so far, but one of the issues that this committee has long championed is the equal opportunity for women in Olympic and national titled sports, like in a U.S. competition. So this committee was very proud. We had a record number of women on this committee, and we passed a law that basically said if you're competing on behalf of the United States of America, you have to have equal treatment of equal facilities. And that was led originally by the women's U.S. soccer team that so profoundly put that issue into the spectrum. And here, Senator Cruz and I are trying to say a similar thing for collegiate sports, which is that if there is any kind of tournament or competition, that women athletes have to have the same access to facilities and training and scope as the men have. And I wondered if I could get some comments on that from anybody who might want to share a perspective.
I think there's a commercial out. Thank you, Senator, for this opportunity again. If you let me, I will become. I come from a single parent. My only opportunity to go to college was to play sport and to have an opportunity to get a free education. And we're missing out on that here, and we're missing that out on all over. And education is getting lost here. We're talking 5-time transfers, 4-time transfers, and they're following the dollar, and the dollar is the heavy right now. But the opportunity to get an education was very important to my mom. And so because of that, a shy kid that walked around with her head down until she was in the 10th grade got an opportunity to look people in the eye and have a voice and go to Syracuse and get 2 degrees. And then not only get a degree, but reach back and bring others along with them and other women. And those women become P-dubs. Those are phenomenal women. And they become the head of households. We don't have women in sport, in all sport. Where will we learn those traits? I just think that sport gives us an equal balance. It can bring a different governance together to communicate about what's right for the sport. It can bring women to believe that they can too become, and an inner city kid like myself who grew up in Syracuse can actually get a college degree and not only get a degree, but bring other women with her. And so I fight and I advocate for all women to have an opportunity to at least have a chance and to have, and if you're gonna let us play, why wouldn't you make it equal? It takes more energy to create the separatism than it does to bring us together. And once you allow us, we will rock the house.
Well, yes, go ahead.
Thank you, Senator Cantwell, and I would echo many of those sentiments. And in my role today as commissioner, proud to say that when it comes to gender equity and the opportunities that we provide both on the conference level, but also the decisions that are made on the institutional level, it's always done from a lens of making sure we have those equal opportunities. Most recently, the Big South Conference just announced will be the first Division I conference to officially sponsor the sport of women's flag football. And I think that that's just one example of the decisions that were made on the institutional level that provided that opportunity for our conference to be able to elevate yet another women's sport.
So you think a requirement in this law is being met, or we need to shore it up for some institutions to make sure that women's, so this is, you go to play in a tournament and you can't be stuck in the, a barbell place with just one barbell. Like you have to have the same athletic accommodations that the men are getting when they're going to play in a tournament and championship.
Absolutely. I think that that is a necessity across the board. That should not be something that is an option. And obviously, we can defer to Coach Jack here, but, you competing this past year. But I would like to think that our current student athletes have that opportunity, and to ensure that institutions as well as conferences continue to provide that, it is a necessity.
Yep.
I agree. When you set the rule and you give us boundaries, everything about me is about sport. In the sport that I play, you give us boundaries, we don't go out of bounds, we all become. And it's the rule. And I think that once we are allowed to know that that's the rule and every athlete is important, I think that through the lens of someone that may want to go outside the lines, if you will, because they want a different athlete to rise above, male in particular, I think that they'll realize how great it is to have us all become. Women's sport is alive and well all over the world right now. And I think that if you give us some boundaries, we can see all of us get to the top.
Coach Huff, did you want to make a comment?
Yeah, I do think, and thank you again for your help and work on this. I do think, Coach Mason, we've all said it, if we don't get some stability and we don't get some protection of our rules, the separation of the issue you're talking about is going to become greater because over time it's going to be a fight to stay in the arms race. It's going to be a fight to fight the agents. It's going to be a fight to pay the money. It's going to be a fight to try and keep up with the transfer portal. And fighting those battles is going to take us further away from making sure that our facilities and our opportunities match. If we can get some control back over what we've known for so long, we can put energy towards making sure the facilities match, making sure the opportunities match. We all know it's a great opportunity. We just watched the Women's College World Series, and I'm watching it, and I don't know anything about it. But I do know it's also.
As a Texan, I'm trying not to gloat on that.
Well, I understand. I understand.
You better
But I do know, 2 days later, everyone in the male sports world is wondering, same with females, are our players gambling on sports now? And are they going to be allowed to do it? So then our focus just went away from, wow, how great of an opportunity was it for a group of young ladies and staff members in schools to be represented on the national stage to, okay, how do I go to my locker room and make sure our guys aren't preparing to bet on sports and then getting a judge in a certain area to say it's okay. So I think this bill will help us focus on those issues more. And without this bill, I think it's going to create a farther and farther gap because that's going to become less and less important to all the other things.
Well, I would say, Coach Huff, there's, I said, Senator Cruz probably and I disagree on 25 things. That's just in this committee. Okay, so, but we agree on this issue of setting some rules. Now, we're kind of disappointed that this universe of institutions and organizations couldn't get there. But, we're an example of people who don't agree but can agree. And we can because we are not going to let this system of 500,000 athletes and a great program of raising up what I call is just human capital, giving them these unique experiences, just like Coach Jack's talking about. Like, this is unique. You don't have to go play in the pros. You're a leader in this institution because you got given a chance to go make a difference, and then you created a profession here. So that's why we are agreeing, and we don't agree on every aspect. We compromised, and that's what the rest of this structure needs to do. They need to come to the table and compromise. Now, one thing that was suggested to us, and I wanted to ask Mr. Crawford about this, is that during this process, and I've been at this for a while now, I think probably 5 or 6 years, talking about this, but at one point in time, people said, you know what, we're going to set some requirements, but the HBCUs, they can't hang here. They need to be out of Division I. And I was adamant that it was a wrong-headed philosophy, that the issue here is, well, let me just explain. I represent probably over 150,000 aerospace workers. They don't all work for Boeing. A lot of them work for the supply chain. But guess where Boeing goes immediately when they need a worker? They go to that supply chain. And this whole ecosystem, Division II, Division III, and even HBCUs, there are a lot of athletes that come up through that system. So we're not going to cut that off, and we're not going to make it a lower status. But Mr. Crawford, if you had any thoughts about why it's so important to preserve the HBCUs in the Division I atmosphere, I would love to hear those comments.
Thank you, Senator. HBCUs showcase some superb, not just superb athletes, but superb students. And for decades, HBCUs have produced professionals in every field that you can mention, including sports. And as Texas Southern University is a member of the Southwestern Athletic Conference, the SWAC, and very competitive in the SWAC. We've had our occasion, the history of Texas Southern University defeating some of predominant Division I institutions. So it's really not the label on your institution. It's about the character of the individuals within your institution that are teaching these women and men and coaching them and preparing them to compete, because it's about competing. And I mentioned that, and I focus on competing because this bill enables competition and the ability to compete to be spread across the board, so that you just spoke about women's sports. Well, if you getting at the ability where you have some controls, where the cost, you don't have this continual bidding war, where you're not in a constant recruiting mode because you're constantly trying to recruit that great player that just defeated your team. But you put some sort of controls around that, then those resources, as the coach just indicated, can be put into other things, so that your non-revenue generating sports are benefiting from those resources. Those students that are in those non-revenue generating sports are able to compete, continue to be competitive, and the money doesn't just simply flow into those sports where that gain all the attention. So, and for HBCUs, that becomes very important. Obviously, we manage our resources very carefully. We invest very heartily for our students to succeed, but controlling that bidding, turning this, as we just said, the Hunger Games aspect of it economically will be very beneficial to historic Black colleges and universities, as well as other institutions that are, mid-sized Division I institutions.
Well, we've tried to articulate, and I don't know, maybe we have to go back to Coach Legette Jack about this, but because you're the basketball expert here at the table, right? Is that right? Or is there anybody? I was so proud that Howard made
We have someone locked in the cage back there.
I was so proud that Howard University made the 64 tournament, right? I was thinking this is so great that they are, and you could see the excitement on campus. There's nothing like making that tournament every year for people who want to say, we can. And I think that's what we're also trying to preserve here, is that this is about giving people an opportunity. But then when you look at the NBA draft, I don't know how many of those kids really are coming from anybody who was in the Final Four. I think we looked this up, or even the Final 8. They're not, that's not who the draft is. That's not who the draft is. The draft is people from all across the system who got to show their skills on some hardwood somewhere. And so don't we have this wrong about that if we cut the ecosystem and we have less schools participating, you're just going to have less athletes, and you're going to have less athletes making it. I keep telling the NBA and the NFL, you're going to cut your own future workforce because you're not going to have an ecosystem that's all across the United States. But I don't know if you have a comment about this issue of who makes it and who doesn't make it, and why really basketball players come from all over. They don't come from the top 4 teams that make it to the finals. They come from the entire ecosystem, and they make it to the pros.
The beauty of sport, right? And my teams are always consistently from all over the world, from Australia, Nigeria to, I've coached a multitude of student athletes, and we were a little school called Buffalo at one point, and we just told our story. You know, what's your why? What's your reason? What you zip down, put in your chest, and zip up. Let them see that on display for those 40 minutes. And that young team at Buffalo went to the Sweet 16, first time in the history, men or women, out of the 43 SUNY system schools, because you allowed us a platform. And we can play against anybody for 40 minutes. You can be as good as anybody. And so if you cut that down to just say, let's have a super team, super conference, and that becomes our reality, how much of the world that we're going to miss out on and the talent that we're going to be.
I'm sure that's the SEC.
You know, it's we're getting bigger. But I love what you're doing. You're putting a stop to this, right? So I just really, really think that the more you allow everyone to have an opportunity, from the mid-majors to the HBCs to little teams that's coming up in the ACC, like a Syracuse, to give them an opportunity to play and have a chance to be a part of this thing, you're going to see not just great athletes and great students. You're going to find culturally based kids that are a little bit different than what your little 5% would look like if you just make a super course, super conference. And I am so about everybody having an opportunity to fly or to fail.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
So I will say, President Crawford, that TSU will always have a place near and dear to my heart, because as you know, back in 2018, TSU hosted me for a fairly bizarre event when I played one-on-one against Jimmy Kimmel. And we had 6,000 people come out to watch that game.
Can we see the tape?
It's the whole thing aired on Jimmy Kimmel the next day, and I'm just going to quote the ESPN broadcaster who was there that night, who said, if Dr. Naismith had seen what happened here today, he would have invented a different sport. So, Coach, I apologize for what we did. I was a mediocre high school player. I'm still a mediocre high school player. But you guys were wonderful hosts.
Senator,
and
we're ready to have you back right now.
I promised we would never do that again to the game. But I want to just ask a couple of final questions. We're going to wrap up in just a minute, but I want to ask a question to President Crawford and also Commissioner Montgomery. As Senator Cantwell and I approached this bill, we tried to look from the cost side to put some rules in place and just stop the constant bidding war that is pricing schools and programs out of being able to compete. But we also tried to look to the revenue side and to provide for pooling media rights to grow the pie, because if there's a larger pie, there's more money for the tremendously successful programs, but there's more money for all the programs and all the sports. That, to both of us, is a really important part of this bill, and I would be interested in both of your reactions to that portion, the media pooling portion, and the potential to provide more revenue for the institutions you represent.
Of course. Thank you so much for that question. You know, there's no qualms about the importance of media outlet. Here in the Big South Conference, we have a very valuable partnership with ESPN that we negotiate over several years, and it is by far one of our most valuable opportunities to give our student athletes that platform. In reviewing the section about pooling and, of course, needing the 75% to opt in, that is an area that I've worked with our lobbyists on, making sure that we understand how that could potentially drive additional revenue, because we stand with you in the importance of protecting Olympic sports and women's sports. And so that is an area that we appreciate the attention, and we are continuing to evaluate, should that 75% opt in, how could that open up additional revenues? But make no question about it, that is something that is important to us, reserving the opportunity for Olympic sports as well as women's sports.
Right.
We're very excited about the potential of that element of the bill, where revenue, if you can increase your revenue, then you can increase what you provide to students.
Yep.
And if you increase what you provide to the students, then you're increasing what you're offering to your fan base. And it just generates more excitement, which will in turn generate more revenue growth. So providing that platform, I think it will be up to us to make it work. So if we can get the opt-in, as the commissioner just indicated, there's great potential there. So I encourage both of you to continue along that path because it has great potential, I believe, for all of us.
So, all right, final question, and this is to everyone here. So it's been a couple of weeks since Senator Cantwell and I rolled this out, and the reaction has been incredibly positive. We have seen support from conferences across the country. We have seen support from leaders, from university presidents, from trustees. Just today, Coach Calipari put out a coach's letter that had a number of coaches across the country that were calling on Congress to pass this bill. It has been encouraging, but there have been some critics who have thrown rocks at it, and that's the nature of doing anything, is that you get some critics. And my view is this bill has taken 3 years for us to get here. Senator Cantwell and I literally sat in the conference room 6-8 hours a day after day after day, negotiating and each making compromises, each giving in on things that Senator Cantwell gave in on things she didn't like, I gave in on things I didn't like, and that's how we got to a middle ground trying to solve this problem. My view is this is the only train leaving the station, which is this bill, I believe, has a real prospect of passage. It is bipartisan. Anything to pass has to get at least 60 votes in the Senate. If you can't get 60 votes, it's not going to pass. And this is the only bill there is that has a real chance. And our objective is not to get 60 votes. I'd like to get a lot more than 60. I'd like to see a really strong bipartisan vote, which then sends this bill to the House and ultimately to the President for signature. In my view, anyone who's a critic, anyone who is attacking this bill, has the burden of saying, what's the alternative? If you don't like this bill, what's the alternative that actually has a path to being passed and signed into law? And so my question to everyone is, if this bill doesn't happen, I think the alternative is doing nothing. And my question is, what happens if Congress does nothing? If we don't act, what do y'all see as the future of college athletics in the next 3 to 5 years if Congress can't come together and work together in a bipartisan way to protect college sports?
Student athlete starts.
I'll speak up from a student athlete standpoint. I think that's a really great question. So, in our opinion, I think majority of us believe that we'll continue to have chaos and no regulations on issues and topics that, are very important and that are causing trouble within all sports and all female and the male side. So, at the end of the day, we believe that the regulations and the structure of the topics and issues that this bill brings about creates the structure that we need to continue to put our best foot forward. Without this structure, we're not going to be able to, continue to advance the NCAA, as well as all of athletics in each individual sport. This is an opportunity to, like I said earlier, play the sport we love while having protections and continue to have opportunities as student athletes. What I see the future if this does not pass is chaos and more, time, waiting, things to get more jumbled up and confused. Student athletes want to play the game they love while getting education and career. So, thank you.
I think that if nothing is done, we will continue to see the rules that the NCAA still has, one by one, start to get knocked down by the courts every time someone does something against the rule and then goes to the judge of their choice to rule in their favor. And then we have each state regulating to how it helps them. Texas will pass something to help Texas and A&M. Georgia will pass something to help Georgia, and so on. And I think if we continue down this route, we're not going to have rules. There's going to be no integrity left in the game. And without, clear, enforceable, and fair rules, then there's no point in us even competing. If, you mentioned if the football player drops the ball, did they gamble on it? That shouldn't be the concern. We want to continue with our sports. We want to get our degrees and take this experience. I have loved college swimming, and I would love to continue it, but at this current rate, it won't exist for, the kids in middle school and high school.
Yep.
If, the bidding wars continue and all the money that does go to these non-revenue and Olympic sports goes to football and to the bidding wars.
College athletics is literally built into the DNA of who we are as a country. Being a former student athlete, I sit here today because of an opportunity I had that Orange Basketball provided. So when I think about all the changes that have happened in the last 10 to 12, 15 years, without a bill that balances protections and restrictions, which I think there is a balance here, the ecosystem that we all know and love will continue to be chipped away at. Through various lawsuits and the inability to be able to govern and have a level of competition that is embedded on integrity and fairness. And I think that that's something we should all be concerned about.
I would say that doing nothing is not an option because it would just accelerate the economic arms race that's engaged in right now, and then you will have over time a narrowing of the ability to compete, schools being able to offer the opportunity to compete. And that is not what college sports and intercollegiate sports was designed to achieve. And my concern is that the pursuit of the perfect can result in the loss of the good. And this is a superior bill. It covers a wide range of areas that I think you've heard from coaches, heard from commissioners, heard from students and from those of us in administration, that it offers the pathway forward to begin to bring a framework of rationality to post-house intercollegiate athletics.
We're not chasing perfection, we're chasing consistency, right? That's what we're talking about. The idea of what can be and what can grow. I look at the college experience and what it is special. For everybody sitting at these tables, it's special. And what we're really talking about here is, when you look at it, the athletic experience is like a carton of milk. It has an expiration date. And when it's done, it's done. So then what happens is that we move into this next phase. And college gave us, these tools, the strength, the confidence, the abilities, to endure. It wasn't just the education. It was the experience itself and the people that were around us. So when we talk about balance, we're losing balance. And I think restoring balance and giving our student athletes in all sports, men and women, the opportunity to grow, be better, and grow their sports as well as, sustain success is needed and necessary.
Culture. We're going to lose our culture. What does that look like with a room with no borders? It's almost like you see your kid coloring outside the lines. How beautiful is that? Oh my gosh, she's 3, she's 4, she's 5. Well, she's 18 now, and she's still coloring outside the lines. It's not so pretty anymore. And we're getting to the point right now that the picture isn't pretty. And we can't make it perfect, but we can try. And I think that one thing that I can give you is the culture that we were instilled in us when we were younger is that we listened to our coach, we stayed with our coach, we fought with our coach. And one time we transferred, and then that was it. And after that, you have to pay your own way because it's an educational opportunity. But we stayed, and because of that, 42 years later, I still connect with my teammates, and we still go on vacations together. We still talk about the Block S and what it done for us. There's no more stories. There's no more culture talked about. Why? Because we are going to lose that if your bill doesn't pass. We need you in a desperate way. We need this, and we don't. Some of us are going to say bad things about it, but they don't really know what they don't know. And once we get that structure back, this sport that we play, all sports, swimming, tennis, basketball, is beautiful. And it's going to be watched, and it's going to be loved, and it's going to be adored. But right now, we're coloring outside the line so much, and we're turning older.
Yeah. All right, Coach Huff, why don't you close us out?
Yeah, well, I hadn't planned on being the final act, but I think everyone's touched on some really good points from different perspectives. But let me say this: college athletics is one of the very few things still left in our world that is pure, brings cultures together, brings race, creed, gender, whether it's 100,000 people in a stadium or 100 people on the edge of a pool for 2.5 hours or for whatever the game time is, we all come together. And I think a lot of people who have nothing to do with college athletics, their lives are going to change because the purity of what we've known, whether you're cheering for Texas or whether you're cheering for Oklahoma or whether you're, neither and you're just at the game tailgating and enjoying that celebration, that's going to be no longer because we're going to be in a system that is completely broken. And the people that are going to get affected are not only the student athletes and administrators inside the entity, but it's going to be the people that work their tails off to go buy a ticket to see the Longhorns play. It's going to be the people that grow up with their kids in jerseys of our student athletes because they don't have a connection to Patrick Mahomes, but they do know the starting quarterback at the University of Memphis. It's going to be the St. Jude's hospitals in the city of Memphis that when we take our team and those young people who are dealing with bigger things than what we are talking about right now in life situations, they're not going to have that because there may not be a Memphis University because of the size. So we're fighting for something. We're supporting you as you fight for something that is bigger than just the student athletes on the courts and the fields and the pools, and they are important. But there are people that will never touch a college sport that need us to get it right, to keep it going. There's parents that are going to take their kids to these games. There's parents that are going to introduce discipline and accountability, responsibility through watching someone get a penalty on a play. Their kids are never going to get a scholarship to play at these universities, but they're going to say, well, why did they go back 5 yards? They went back 5 yards because he jumped off sides. Those are the things that I think also the naysayers may not realize, and it may be all good and fine and dandy, yeah, they deserve, but this is going to affect our nation. This is not just going to affect our student athletes, and we need you guys to continue to carry this torch, please.
Well, I think that was so well said. I just have to, sports is about hopes and dreams, and it is about fans connecting to other people who are striving to achieve those hopes and dreams. But, recently Washington played Maryland, and I went to the game, and the Huskies weren't doing too well, right? they were going to get beat, but somehow they fought back and they won at the last minute. And as I was standing there taking photos with everybody else, I saw a man who I said hi to, and his son. They were from the Northwest. I don't know that I don't even think they knew who I was, right? They didn't catch that who I was. But the man said, I had a Husky jersey that I got at a Rose Bowl that I got from my dad. He said, I never wore it, and I've kept it. But 20 minutes ago, I gave it to my son, and he put it on, and then we had this magic Husky victory. And I thought, what a special connection to sports, that these fans are just sharing their lives. And I'm a baseball fan because my dad was a baseball fan, because his dad said, Paul, the World Series is on, you got to come home. So this is about culture. It is about uniting us in a way. And you're right, there isn't a lot left right now that unites us. So we shouldn't throw this away because we can, the Knicks excitement in New York right now is a symbol of that. I'm sure San Antonio is just as excited.
Spurs in 6.
I'm sure, but these are life experiences. It is where we share joy. It's where we share the accomplishments of athletes, and we're all admiring of it. So let's not throw it away. So thank you. Sorry, I wasn't going to let him close out, but it just reminded me of generation to generation. This is I think you told me once, Mr. Chairman, I think we were talking about something, and you said, I'm taking my daughters to the baseball game. And I said, good for you, because there is nothing like this bonding experience between families and cherished moments. And let's face it, it shows, excitement. The kids like it when their parents are excited about something, and it's a society being excited about achievement. So let's hold on to it because it's very, very special.
Look, my youngest daughter and I have gone to almost every home playoff game for the Astros for the last 8 years, and it's been a magical 8 years for the Stros. And I've tried to, we started going when she was 7, and it's, I tried to tell her this is not normal to win 7 consecutive ALCSs and 4 World Series and win 2, but like that journey, we will always have that, and it's just the two of us, and it's an amazing thing, and that has brought so many families together to share sports and cheer together. I want to thank everyone, and I will say that what y'all said about sports and culture and students and opportunity was beautiful. And I'll just close by saying failure is not an option. Like, we can't fail at this, because to see over 500,000 kids every year having the opportunities they have, to see that go away would be an absolute tragedy, and we can't let that happen. So thank you for being here. Yeah. Of course.